how PMS is not normal. And I see so many clients in clinic who are like, be talking about their menstrual cycle, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, and then I just get like a bit of PMS, like the bloating and the headaches and like the sugar cravings and things like that. But that's just, that's just PMS. Like everyone gets that. And I'm like, no, they are literally like signals from your body that there are some things that are out of balance. So
When it comes to women's health, and especially the menstruation cycle, I read somewhere early on that a reason why menstruation cycles might be actually very good is because women are actually getting like a monthly feedback loop. Like they're getting feedback from their body, and it kind of tells them, okay, this is this is the status update when it comes to my gut health, and my hormone health. And so it was pretty interesting me reading about that, because in my head, with my very limited knowledge, I always just thought that the cycle is something where it's like, for a few weeks you're kind of just ramping up, and it's a moment of like just temporary pain, and then you just have to get through it, and then you move forward. Would you be able to enlighten us about the overall like menstruation cycle and just the science behind it? Because it is something that I'm totally foreign to.
yeah, and what an interesting thing to say, because um, yes, I feel like you just saying that this morning, I just made a post about PMS, and I was talking about how PMS is not normal. And I see so many clients in clinic who are like, will be talking about their menstrual cycle, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, and then I just get like a bit of PMS, like the bloating and the headaches and like the sugar cravings and things like that. But that's just, that's just PMS. Like everyone gets that. And I'm like, no, they are literally like signals from your body that there are some things that are out of balance. So like exactly what you read is so right. I read this book like a while back, and it stuck with me so much. I think it was by Lee Heckman, who's an incredible woman who talks all about hormonal health. She's in Australia, but she said that your period is your report card. Your report card throughout the whole month. And so I thought that that was really fascinating, because I was like, that is so true. We do have all of these hormones going on in our body, and they rise and fall throughout different parts of the cycle. And so we have 4 actual phases in our cycle, and every single one of them, different hormones are predominant throughout all of them. And all of those hormones actually can impact our metabolism, can impact our energy levels, our ability to digest things, our like so much, our ability to build muscle, our ability to lose weight, our moods. I could literally go on forever. They literally dominate so many things, and it's all in this lead up for ovulation. So basically these 4 phases of the cycle that we have are in preparation for creating a child. Now, even if we don't want to conceive, um, ovulation is incredibly important in order for all the other hormones prior, before, and after to take effect, and to it's kind of like this beautiful symphony that works in our body. And so we have estrogen, progesterone, we have a bit of testosterone, which are androgen levels. We call them androgens, but testosterone is the general one. And all of these, like, there's a lot of other hormones at play, but those 3 are the most important. And they all interact in different ways throughout the cycle. So if we're experiencing just before our ovulation, we should get this rise in estrogen. Now, if we are experiencing already elevated levels of estrogen as a result of toxin exposure, or as a result of, like drinking a lot of alcohol, or a lot of chronic stress, or maybe you have a predisposed condition to something, and then ovulation comes around and estrogen starts to rise, and we already have elevated levels of estrogen, that causes an excess surge of estrogen, for example. And that can give us really intense symptoms. So for some people, they experience really intense bloating and digestive issues when they're going through ovulation. So even if just before your period you're experiencing in the middle of your cycle things like that, that can show us, okay, maybe potentially you've got some estrogen dominance going on and you're not detoxifying that excess estrogen. And so we can already get a lot of insight as to, okay, well, maybe this is what's going on mid-cycle for you. And then when we go around to just before our period, we get this rise in progesterone. Progesterone is our relaxing, it's our feel-good hormone. It keeps us really calm. It does help with digestion. But as you can imagine, if that is in excess, if there's too much progesterone, we can get, like, imagine it as a slow calming hormone, we can get things like constipation, we can get really low mood, we can get irritability, we can get exhaustion. So those are just two of the hormones throughout the cycle that, when they're out of balance, can really impact, our well-being and our health and our ability to have energy to be able to metabolize and absorb nutrients, and the list goes on. So I think that all the phases ideally need to be working optimally, and we can look at these things and see where our symptoms are at. So I think for most people, I would say the first thing to do is to make sure you track your cycle, because it's actually crazy how many women I see who don't even track their cycle, because whether or not your cycle is regular or it's short or it's long, like, they also tell us about what's going on with your hormonal health. And these hormones like estrogen and progesterone, they dominate things like our digestion. So they can be a reason behind why you're experiencing bloating, constipation, diarrhea, headaches, all of those kind of things. So it's important to, and often with, not often, with almost every single woman that I see, that is a system in the body that I will be looking at to understand whether or not that's what is driving their digestive issues. So yeah, it's not something to be overlooked.
Super interesting. So when it comes to these specific two, we mentioned three hormones, but specifically estrogen and progesterone, is it usually the case that there's too much or there's too less? The reason I ask is I'm trying to understand what's like the best course of action then to restore that balance of healthy levels of each.
Yeah. So this can be, very multifactorial and really dependent on the person. But yes, you can definitely have low estrogen and you can definitely have low progesterone. And so you can either be dominant in these hormones or you're not producing enough of these hormones. And either one can cause issues with, like, things like our thyroid. It can cause it can, like, for most people who are going through menopause, for example, they'll experience these extreme fluctuations in estrogen, but mostly the estrogen is starting to decrease. And estrogen is really important for our bone metabolism, for our ability to build muscle, for our energy, for fat loss, all of those kind of things. So that's when, like, those symptoms can start coming up, for an example, and that's low estrogen. So yeah, there's a lot of things that happen there. I think it is really case dependent what is going on with that person. But a few things that I would be looking at is, okay, well, I'd make sure that they're ensuring that they're eating enough nutrients, because, for example, something like fiber binds to estrogen and helps us excrete that out in our stools. So if we're not having adequate amounts of fiber, we're going to struggle to detoxify estrogen. If we're experiencing gut dysbiosis, when we have an imbalance of good versus good or beneficial and not so beneficial bacteria, that's going to affect our ability to regulate estrogen in our gut microbiome. So that's also going to have an impact. So I would be looking at whether or not that person is experiencing dysbiosis, whether or not they're meeting all of their macronutrients. Are they eating enough protein? Because again, protein can be the building blocks of these hormones as well. So they can affect our ability to regulate and produce these hormones. So are you getting in like at least 30 grams of protein per meal? Are you having in a total of 30 grams of fiber a day? Are you making sure that you're eating some healthy fats? Because healthy fats are super important. They're things like salmon and olive oil, nuts and seeds. All of those kind of things are, again, going to really help with our hormonal production. So diet would be a huge one that I'd be looking at, because like excess amounts of sugar, and processed foods, like basically anything in a packet, is going to impact our hormonal health. How high is our toxic load? Whether or not our liver is clearing that. So there's a lot of things that I would be looking at. But if you were someone who wasn't going to see a practitioner, I would say the first thing that you want to do is you want to be your own investigator and understand what is going on in your cycle. Pick up on the patterns, because that is so empowering. When you know what is going on in your cycle, you're not like, oh, every time you know that on day 23 you are exhausted, and that is when you get really bloated. And so you can start to pick up on patterns of what's happening in the body, and that can give us an indication of, okay, well, what hormones are high, what hormones are low, and then you can support it by understanding a little bit more about like what's going on for you personally. So yeah, I would be looking at diet, but then supplementation is another way that I would be supporting that. And again, it's so specific on what's going on for that person.